My name is Walter Hayes. I'm 64 years old, and I've spent 40 years riding steel and diesel, swing shifts and winters that bit through two pairs of gloves, keeping freight moving along the Midwestern rails. I'm not special. I showed up, did the job, and came home with my hands black and my back barking, same as the men who taught me. What I did guard, though, like a coal stove in a blizzard, was my retirement. I learned early that a man can break his body and still end up broke. So I maxed my contributions, bought extra years when overtime allowed, and left every bonus right where it had earned quietly. I don't brag, and I don't flash. But the truth is, my pension, plus the annuity and a modest set of mutual funds, sit north of $800,000. It isn't a fortune on television, but it's a lifetime on a time card. Most folks don't know that number. My late wife, Elaine, knew. My youngest boy, Ryan, a history teacher with a soft voice and a straight spine, knows enough to tell me when a headline is lying. My grandson thinks I'm made of licorice and pocket knives. That's fine by me. Two people have suddenly taken an interest. Jason, my older son Mark's boy, 29, always hustling, never landing, and Cliff Rourke, an old union pal who used to preach solidarity and now sells exclusive placements from behind a shiny desk. Cliff called last week with a pitch hot enough to melt the receiver. Walt, I've got a vehicle paying 16%, guaranteed. Limited seats. Old friends first. Nothing in finance is guaranteed except fees and regret. I told him I was fine where I was. Jason came by Sunday with fast food and faster talk. Grandpa, you shouldn't let that money rot in boomer funds. I can triple it in crypto options. You just need to sign a few forms so I can, execute. Execute. The word sat wrong in my gut. I washed the burger wrappers and set them in the trash, listening to the house settle. Elaine's Bible sat open on the buffet, a paper strip marking Proverbs. I don't read scripture to win arguments, but the line I'd folded years ago came back clear as whistle code. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. I told Jason I'd think about it. He grinned like I'd handed him the keys to my locker. That night, my phone lit with a number I recognized and didn't trust. Cliff again. Big decisions shouldn't wait, brother. I can send the paperwork. I stared at the blank ceiling and felt, for the first time in a long time, the rails start to hum. Something was coming. And this time it wasn't a train I could step off. Thanksgiving week rolled in with gray skies and the smell of wood smoke. Ryan invited me to his place. Turkey, mashed potatoes, the usual spread. Mark said he and his wife couldn't make it, but Jason showed up anyway, loud and restless, dropping his phone on the table every 5 minutes like he was waiting for a deal to buzz. We'd barely carved the bird when he launched in. Grandpa, I was thinking, that retirement account of yours, it's just sitting there, right? Like paper collecting dust? You know what inflation's doing. Why not let someone younger, sharper, put it to work? The fork froze halfway to my mouth. Ryan frowned. Jason, he said carefully, maybe today isn't the time. But Jason only leaned closer, smirking. Come on. Grandpa doesn't even use email. You really think he can manage 800 grand without screwing something up? Hand it over to me. I'll flip it in 3 months. Easy. The room went quiet except for the hum of the fridge. My grandson had just talked about my life's sweat like it was poker chips he deserved to shuffle. I set my fork down slow. That money isn't a toy. It's my pension. My wife and I saved every penny of it. Jason rolled his eyes. Yeah, and she's gone. You can't take it with you. Why not let me do something with it instead of watching it rot? I could clear both our debts before Christmas. Both our debts. The words cut. He wasn't asking. He was planning. Ryan broke the silence. Jason, stop. That's enough. But Jason wasn't done. He leaned back, arms spread wide. You all act like I'm crazy. Cliff says he can double the investment in a year. He's already set up the paperwork. All Grandpa has to do is sign. I pushed my chair back. The legs screeched across the floor. Paperwork? Jason smirked, tapping his phone. Relax, old man. You'll see soon enough. It was the smirk that chilled me more than the words. It wasn't the face of someone pitching an idea. It was the face of someone who thought the deal was already done. That's when I realized this wasn't just talk. They'd set something in motion. And if I didn't stop it, Thanksgiving would be remembered as the day they carved more than a turkey. The day after Thanksgiving, I called Jason over to the cabin. I kept my voice calm on the phone, but my knuckles were white around the receiver. If he wanted to treat me like an ATM, he could at least say it to my face without a table full of turkey between us. He showed up in a leather jacket too thin for the cold, reeking of cologne and stale smoke. He didn't sit, just paced my living room like he owned it. So, I began, let's get straight to it. You and Cliff are pushing some kind of deal. I want to know exactly what you think you're entitled to. Jason smirked, hands buried in his pockets. Grandpa, you make it sound sinister. I'm just trying to help you out. You've got money gathering cobwebs. Cliff's got opportunities. I connect the dots. Everybody wins. Everybody, I repeated. Meaning you. He laughed. Well, sure. I get a cut. Call it a finder's fee. But think about it. You don't have to lift a finger. I handle the paperwork, the calls, the apps. You just sit back and let your balance triple. I stood, slow. Jason, listen carefully. That pension isn't some loose change on the counter. It's my blood and bone from 40 years of railroad grit. You don't touch it. Not 1 cent. His eyes narrowed, the smirk fading. Come on, Grandpa. Don't be stubborn. Times have changed. You don't even know how to move money around anymore. 1 signature and you're set for life. 1 signature, I said. The one you and Cliff are so eager to forge. His jaw tightened. Just a flicker, but I caught it. He turned toward the door. You'll see, old man, whether you want to or not. I followed him out onto the porch. Snow crunched under his boots as he stomped down the steps. Jason, I called, my voice carrying sharper than I expected. If you go down this road, you won't like where it ends. He didn't answer. Didn't look back. Just slid into his dented Honda, revved too loud, and tore off into the dark. I stood in the cold long after the taillights vanished, the echo of his words burning in my ears. 1 signature. He thought I'd cave. Or worse, he thought I was too weak to fight back. And that silence between us, heavy as iron, told me this was only the beginning. The following Monday, I got a call from Pete Morales, an old buddy who now worked part-time in the union's benefits office. His voice was low, careful. Walt, I don't want to alarm you, but something crossed my desk this morning. Looked odd, so I set it aside. Better you hear it from me than through the pipeline. I drove down that afternoon, the winter sky flat and gray. Pete met me in the lobby with a manila envelope under his arm. Inside was a stack of forms stamped with the union's seal, authorization requests to transfer my pension into a managed investment vehicle. The signature at the bottom was supposed to be mine, except it wasn't. The loops on the W sagged like they'd been traced from memory. The H in Hayes was crooked. I stared so long my vision blurred. Somebody's trying to move your nest egg, Pete said. If this hadn't hit my desk, it might have slid through. Cliff's name popped up as the broker of record. Cliff, the man who once carried a lunch pail beside mine, now circling like a vulture. I looked at Pete. You sure this hasn't been processed? Not yet. I flagged it, but it'll raise questions. You need to shut this down, fast. And Walt, Jason's name was listed as your designated agent. The room tilted. My grandson had stepped deeper into the swamp than I'd feared. Driving home, my knuckles whitened around the wheel. I passed the frozen fields where I used to take Jason hunting when he was 12. He'd carried my old .22 with pride, eyes wide when he spotted a deer. I'd trusted him. Now he was signing papers to gut the future his grandmother and I had bled for. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it, a screenshot of a text thread between Jason and Cliff. Jason, got the forms in. Old man won't even notice. Cliff, good. Once it clears, you're looking at 6 figures. Easy. My hands shook, but not from age. Betrayal had a taste. Metallic, bitter, impossible to swallow. Pete's warning, the forged documents, the text thread. It wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a heist. And my name was the lock they were picking. And they thought I'd be too tired, too old, too broken to fight. They'd forgotten who built that pension in the first place. By the time Sunday rolled around, word had spread farther than it should have. I don't know if Jason bragged to cousins or if Cliff leaked things in the bar, but whispers carried. I showed up at Mark's house for what I thought would be a simple family dinner. Instead, I walked into a circle of half-hidden smirks. Chloe, Mark's wife, was slicing pie like she was hosting a reality show, her voice sugar-sweet and sharp as glass. "Walter, dear," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We were just talking about how money doesn't do much good sitting in dusty accounts. Don't you think it's time to loosen your grip?" Mark chuckled, sipping his beer. Dad's always been tight-fisted. Maybe Jason's right. Better to put that money to use before it withers away. I froze in the doorway. Pie smell thick and cloying. My own blood, treating me like a vault they were impatient to crack. Ryan tried to cut in, bless him. "That's not fair. Dad earned every cent. Nobody has the right to pressure him." But Chloe just arched an eyebrow. "We're family. Of course we have the right to care about what happens to the money." The room laughed, a quick, cruel chorus. Something inside me broke then. Not anger, not yet, but a hollow ache that reached all the way to my bones. I mumbled some excuse about being tired, left before dessert, and drove home under a sky heavy with frost. At the cabin, I opened the fridge, a Tupperware of leftover beans, a carton of milk gone sour. I sat at the kitchen table with a chipped plate, eating cold beans straight from the container. The clock ticked too loud, the silence pressing harder with each bite. Elaine's chair sat across from me, empty but not silent. I could almost hear her voice. "You don't deserve this, Walter." But the truth stung worse than hunger. I was alone. My son's house had no place for me except as a punchline. My grandson saw me as a payday. And the pension I'd guarded for decades was being carved up like a turkey. I stared at the Bible on the buffet, at the ledger of savings I'd once been proud of, and felt like both were slipping through my hands. For the first time, the thought whispered, maybe I was too old, too worn down, to keep fighting. That night, the cold pressed against the windows hard enough to make them groan. I couldn't sleep. I sat in my armchair staring at the ledger where I'd tracked every contribution since 1981. Every extra shift, every overtime dollar, every raise that went straight into the pension instead of a new truck or a vacation. My handwriting had grown shakier over the years, but the numbers told a steady story. Sacrifice stacked high until it became security. I rubbed my temples, ready to close the book, when something slipped loose from the back cover. A folded envelope yellowed with time. My chest tightened as I recognized Elaine's handwriting. I opened it with trembling fingers. "Walter," it read, "if you're reading this, you've probably been through another one of those storms life throws at us. Remember, we built our life brick by brick. No one gave us handouts, and no one has the right to take what we've earned. Promise me you'll fight for it. For us, if anyone ever tries. Don't let age make you small. Don't let pride keep you quiet." Her words hit like a spark in dry tinder. All the shame, the loneliness, the ache of being dismissed. It twisted into something sharper. Resolve. I leaned back, eyes burning, and let out a long breath. The family wanted to see me as an old man, too tired to lift his head. Jason thought I'd roll over, sign a form, and hand away everything Elaine and I had guarded. Cliff thought my loyalty from the old days would make me pliable. They were wrong. I folded the letter and tucked it into the ledger where it belonged. Front page, top pocket. My oath. Then I pulled open the drawer where I kept the small voice recorder I used on hunting trips, the one that could catch every whisper of wind. I tested it. The red light blinked back steady. If Jason wanted signatures, if Cliff wanted authorization, then I'd give them words instead. Words caught on tape. Words no one could twist. Elaine's letter echoed in my ears as I turned off the light. Don't let pride keep you quiet. I wouldn't be quiet. Not anymore. By Monday morning, the fog in my head had cleared. Elaine's letter wasn't just comfort. It was marching orders. I sat at the kitchen table with the ledger open, the voice recorder beside it, and a blank yellow pad. Step by step, I wrote out a plan. Step 1, paper. Get certified copies of my pension records from the union office and bank statements from my annuity. If Cliff or Jason had filed anything in my name, the paper trail would show it. Step 2, audio. Jason had a big mouth, and Cliff liked to hear himself talk. All I had to do was steer the conversation, let them brag, and keep my recorder running. A forged document could be argued, but a grandson on tape calling his grandpa an ATM was hard to ignore. Step 3, witness. Pete had already seen the fake paperwork. Ryan could testify about Jason's pressure at Thanksgiving. If I brought in people I trusted, it wouldn't just be my word against theirs. Step 4, leverage. Cliff's brokerage wasn't some Wall Street fortress. It was a storefront with a frosted glass window and a secretary who barely looked 20. If he was funneling money out of retirees, the regulators would love a reason to dig in. I'd give them one. As I wrote, the shame of that cold bean dinner lifted. My hands steadied, my chest filled. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was moving. That afternoon I called Pete. "Hold those forms you found," I told him. "Make certified copies for me, quietly." He agreed, voice steady. Next I called Ryan. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. "You remember what Jason said at Thanksgiving? Write it down, every word you recall, date, time, place." Finally, I slipped the recorder into my coat pocket, set to standby. From here on out, any conversation with Jason or Cliff would be more than talk. It would be evidence. I closed the ledger, capped my pen, and leaned back. The plan wasn't fancy, but neither was rail work. You laid the track one tie at a time, kept your eye on the gauge, and never let shortcuts kill you. And if Jason and Cliff thought I was just a tired old man too slow to fight, well, they were about to hear how wrong they were. 2 days later, I walked into the union benefits office with my cap pulled low. Pete met me in the back, away from curious eyes. He slid a folder across the desk. Heavy, stamped, official. "Certified copies," he said. "Straight from the system. Shows your original beneficiary forms, untouched since Elaine passed." And then this. He tapped another document, stamped only last week. "Authorization request for transfer. It's got your name, but it isn't your hand." I studied the shaky loops, the lazy cross on the T. Not mine. Never mine. "That's your first nail," Pete said grimly. "Paper doesn't lie." I tucked the folder under my arm. Physical evidence #1. That evening, I checked my email, a habit I usually avoided. Buried in my spam folder was a forward from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, "FYI, thought you should see this." I clicked. It was a chain of emails between Jason and Cliff. "Jason, he won't notice. Just tell him it's standard forms." Cliff, "Good. Once it clears, we split 60/40ths. He'll still get statements, so keep him calm until payout." Jason, "What if he resists?" Cliff, "Then we lean on him. Old men break easy." My stomach turned. But I forced myself to print every page, careful to staple the header with the timestamps intact. Another nail. The next day I stopped by the bank where my annuity was managed. My old buddy Red, now working security, pulled me into a side office. "Walt," he whispered, "someone's been phishing. Calls asking about your account, trying to confirm balances. They pretended to be you once. Voice didn't match." "You got recordings?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Might be able to burn you a copy." I left with the promise, the folder heavy under my arm, and the emails sealed in a plastic sleeve. Driving home, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The man staring back wasn't beaten, wasn't frail. He was gathering steel tie by tie, rail by rail. I parked the truck, shut the door against the cold, and laid everything out on the kitchen table. Documents, emails, notes in my own hand. The evidence wasn't just building, it was starting to roar. Jason and Cliff thought they were writing my obituary. Instead, I was drafting their indictment. I chose neutral ground, O'Malley's Bar, the kind of place where the jukebox never worked, but everyone knew the bartender by name. Friday night, I called Jason and Cliff, told them I was ready to hear their proposal. They came fast. Jason smelling of cheap whiskey, Cliff in a tailored suit that didn't fit the man I remembered. We sat at a corner booth. I set the recorder in my shirt pocket, light blinking steady. Jason dove in first. "Grandpa, I know you've been hesitant, but this is a sure thing. Cliff's lined up investors. The return is guaranteed. You sign the forms, and by Easter, you'll be sitting on double." Cliff smoothed his tie, leaning in. "Walter, you've known me 30 years. I wouldn't steer you wrong. This is about making sure your legacy grows instead of rotting in accounts no one touches." I let them talk, nodding, sipping the watery beer. Then I leaned forward. "Funny you should say that, Cliff, because I saw an email where you told Jason, 'Old men break easy.' That your words?" Jason stiffened. Cliff's jaw twitched. "You don't know what you saw," Cliff said quickly. "Oh, I know exactly," I said, voice steady. I pulled out the stapled printouts and slid them across the table. "Dated, time-stamped, with your names on them." Jason's face went pale. "Where'd you get those?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is this." I tapped my pocket. "Every word you've said tonight is on record." Jason calling me an ATM. Cliff promising guaranteed returns. You two just buried yourselves. The bartender glanced over, curious. A couple of regulars leaned closer. I'd picked the booth on purpose, quiet enough to catch words, loud enough to have witnesses. Cliff hissed, "You think anyone will believe you? You're a tired old man with shaky hands. We'll say you misunderstood." "Then why?" I asked, standing. "Are you sweating like guilty men?" The silence that followed was thick enough to choke. Jason's hands trembled on the table, his bravado gone. Cliff muttered something under his breath, already calculating. I tucked the papers back into my coat and walked toward the door, every eye in the place following. Before I stepped out, I turned back just once. "You wanted my signature. What you got instead is evidence. And this train isn't stopping where you think." Their faces as I left, the panic, the dawning realization, were worth more than any pension statement. The night after O'Malley's, my phone lit up with 3 missed calls from Jason. I didn't answer. By morning, there was a voicemail waiting. His voice slurred, mean. "You think you're smart, old man? You think a couple of papers and some bar talk changes anything? You're finished. That money's mine. Back off, or you'll regret it." I saved the message, thumb hovering just long enough to feel the weight of it. Another nail for the coffin. 2 hours later, an envelope slid under my cabin door. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper scrawled in thick black marker. "Drop it or lose everything." For a moment, the cold crept under my skin. Not fear exactly, but the kind of chill that tells you the fight just got real. They weren't just plotting. They were desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. That evening, headlights cut across my driveway. A figure climbed out, tall, in a sharp coat dusted with snow. At first, I thought it might be another threat, but then I recognized him. Evan Keller, a young lawyer I'd met at a union fundraiser. He was Pete's nephew. "Mr. Hayes," he said, shaking my hand firm. "Uncle Pete filled me in. I heard about O'Malley's. You're going to need proper representation." I hesitated. Lawyers meant money, and I'd spent a lifetime avoiding bills bigger than my paycheck. But Evan's eyes were steady, his voice certain. "You've already got enough evidence to light up half a courtroom. The trick is making sure it sticks. Let me help you. No upfront fee. We'll settle on the back end." I poured him coffee at the kitchen table, laid out the ledger, the certified documents, the printed emails, the recorder with its blinking red light. He studied each piece like a jeweler examining stones. "This is strong," he said finally. "The forged pension forms are fraud. The emails establish conspiracy. The bar recording and voicemail are intimidation. Add Pete and Ryan as witnesses, and you've got a case the DA will salivate over." I leaned back, the knot in my chest easing. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I wasn't carrying the load alone. As Evan packed the evidence into a neat binder, I caught my reflection in the window. Old, yes. Weathered, but not beaten, not alone. Jason and Cliff wanted me silent. Instead, they just handed me allies. And the louder they shouted, the more guilty they looked. 2 days later, Ryan pulled into my drive with snow still clinging to his boots. He looked rattled, a man who'd seen something he couldn't shake. "You need to see this," he said, handing me a USB drive. "I was at Riverfront Casino with a buddy. Guess who walked in?" I slid the drive into my laptop. The screen lit with shaky phone footage. There was Jason, red-faced, waving a tumbler of bourbon. Beside him, Cliff leaned against the bar, laughing too loud. The video zoomed in just as Jason shouted over the noise. "We've got him cornered. Once that pension clears, Walter won't even know what hit him. Old man's been sitting on that cash too long. It's our turn now." The crowd cheered, oblivious, but the words were clear as church bells. He raised his glass. To the retirement fund. I paused the video, heart hammering. There it was. Not rumor, not suspicion. A public confession wrapped in arrogance. Ryan leaned forward. They didn't even notice me recording. I doubt they remember the night at all. But this is your silver bullet. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. A new voicemail. Jason's voice, ragged this time, almost frantic. You think you've won something? You don't know who you're messing with. I'll burn it all down before I let you take a dime. His threats were unraveling, each one more desperate than the last. The balance of power was shifting. For months I'd been on defense, patching leaks, watching my back. Now, for the first time, they were the ones stumbling. Evan reviewed the footage that night at my kitchen table. He didn't even hide his grin. Combined with the forged documents and the voicemail, this is damning. Judges eat up video evidence, especially when it's their own words. We'll subpoena the casino for the original security footage. That nails the chain of custody. I sat back, letting the weight of it settle. The ledger had been the first spark. The forged forms showed intent. The bar recording proved planning. And now? Now I had them drunk and bragging, spelling out their crime in front of half a casino. Evan snapped the binder shut. Walter, they've lost control. We don't chase anymore. We set the trap. And for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to smile, because I knew what came next. The county courthouse smelled of varnish and dust. Like every decision ever made, there still lingered in the wood. I sat at the plaintiff's table, Evan on one side, Pete behind me, Ryan waiting in the hallway to testify. Across the aisle sat Jason and Cliff with their slick attorney, both of them in cheap suits they thought made them look respectable. The judge called the room to order. Evan stood tall, voice steady as he laid out the case. First came the forged pension withdrawal forms. The notary's affidavit proved Jason's signature attempt was fraudulent. Cliff's fingerprints on the paperwork tied him directly. Then came the ledger, my old logbook with every number, every payout, authenticated by an independent accountant. This shows decades of lawful management, Evan said, holding it up, and it shows exactly where the theft began. Jason shifted in his chair, jaw tight. Cliff sweated through his collar. Evan pressed play on the recording from O'Malley's. Their voices filled the courtroom, boasting of draining my pension, laughing about leaving me too broke to fight back. The gallery stirred. Even the bailiff looked disgusted. And then, the knockout. Ryan wheeled in the projector. On screen appeared the shaky casino footage. Jason, bourbon in hand, shouting, "We've got him cornered. Once that pension clears, Walter won't even know what hit him. To the retirement fund." The room went silent. Then a murmur rose, sharp and accusing. Jason buried his face in his hands. Cliff tried to whisper to the lawyer, but the damage was done. Their own arrogance had painted the walls with guilt. The defense sputtered about context, about misunderstandings, but the judge wasn't buying it. He leaned forward, voice like gravel. "Gentlemen, I've heard enough. This court finds clear evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and intimidation. Effective immediately, all assets under your control are frozen pending restitution hearings." The gavel cracked. Just like that, it was over. Jason exploded, shouting as deputies cuffed him, "You ruined me, old man. That money was supposed to be mine." Cliff sagged in his chair, pale, muttering that it had been just business. I stood slowly, meeting their eyes one last time. "You erased me once. You don't get to do it twice." As they were dragged from the courtroom, I felt something I hadn't in years. Dignity. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. Evan gathered the evidence. Pete clapped me on the shoulder, and Ryan gave a nod from the back row. They hadn't just helped me fight. They'd helped me win. And Jason and Cliff? They had nothing left but the echo of their own greed. The snow was starting to melt by the time the hearings ended. I went back to my cabin, the same roof I'd hammered nails into 40 years ago, and brewed coffee in my dented old percolator. For the first time in months, it tasted like peace. Jason and Cliff faced years of restitution and a criminal record that would follow them until the grave. My pension was secured, my dignity intact. Pete still drops by with a six-pack. Ryan sends the occasional text. And Evan, well, Evan's become more than just a lawyer. He's family now. I sit on the porch some evenings, watching the lake ice thaw, knowing I fought back when they wanted me silent. And I won. If you've listened this far, thank you. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories Men U60 USA, because stories like mine deserve to be heard.